Welcome to the Scoop World Order. This is the Minnesota game in review edition. Last night, the Buckeyes opened up on the road versus the Golden Gophers. Very tough battle. Those guys were ready to play. They played well. I think Minnesota played about as good as they could have, given their talent level. And so hats off to those guys. I thought they played hard. But at the end, we overwhelmed them with talent and schematics. As always, I got my boy Nevadabuck. Nevada, how are you today?
I'm doing good. Still a little reeling from last night from what we saw, but happy to have the win and happy to be here today.
So give me your initial thoughts last night as you went to bed, and then I assume you probably rewatched the game today, and then your thoughts after your rewatch. Because a lot of times, it's a cliche, but it's usually true. Like, it's not always as bad as you thought or as good as you thought when you rewatch it. But give me your initial takeaways from last night, and then once you rewatch the game today.
Yeah, well, I've had the benefit of watching the game one time, and I've also been kind of burning up the phones and talking to a lot of people close to the program to kind of get people's initial talks. And we'll have more as they break down the tape and things. But I think the game pretty much went to form, that we really thought, we've been talking about this game for months, and I can't, people that listen to our podcast can say how many times I've said, hey, I was really concerned about this game against Minnesota. They've got a veteran offensive line. They returned more starters than anybody in college football. It's a Thursday night, sold out crowd. The one thing I hadn't contemplated at all was the elements, and it was raining hard, and that was a thing. And that was a thing, and especially for a quarterback like Stroud, who's never been in a situation like that, to throw rain on top of all that really made it a huge challenge for the Ohio State team. And Minnesota managed to shorten the game, be opportunistic, keep it close, take the lead at halftime, keep it close into the fourth quarter, have it a one-score game, and they have the ball. And like you said, Ohio State was just able to make more big plays than we just had more firepower than they were. But, there weren't a lot of surprises really in that game. That game was really kind of a classic road Big Ten matchup opening weekend. And like I said, but I think the rain was something that people aren't talking about enough, but I think that was a big factor in a lot of what we saw.
Yeah, I personally, from my experience, like playing in the rain was a miserable experience. I used to hate rain just because, we played Michigan in 07, my senior year. We went up there and it poured, and it was freezing. It was like 37 degrees, freezing rain the entire game. And we couldn't throw the ball at all. Like, I mean, Todd dropped back in the second quarter and threw a pick, and Tress literally did not throw the ball a single time in the second half. Not a single time. We ran every single play because we couldn't manage the elements. And I think people, they see guys like Peyton Manning and professionals that can handle the elements. And it's a lot different when you're a 19-year-old, especially when you're from California where it doesn't rain too much. And it might have been his first game ever in the rain, or, one of the few. It's not like he's a Florida kid where it rains all the time. So, I think that he managed that. I think that he was anxious early because he missed some throws. But I'm not a PJ Fleck fan, but I thought he had a great game plan. He basically played Tressel well, and people used to always make fun of Jim Tressel because he, would run the ball and play defense and punt and do all that stuff. But, there was a formula that won a lot of games, because I think that PJ Fleck and probably Ryan Day knew that the biggest mismatch in the entire game was our receivers versus their secondary. So, the only way to kind of shield them is to hold the ball and keep Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson off the field. So that's why you ground and pound it, and you give, Mo Ibrahim 30 carries, and you take that 3-yard run on first down and let the clock run, and you just keep, that's why they had 38 minutes of time in possession. We had 22. So I thought it was a great game plan, but at the end of the day, between Ryan Day's brilliant schematics and our outstanding talent level at receiver, it just won out, and you see these guys running scot-free. Part of it is their talent and their ability and how well coached they are. The other part is Ryan Day is just a genius when it comes to getting these guys open, because he sees the coverage, he knows what to call, and then all of a sudden you just have Garrett Wilson one-on-one with a free safety who has no chance of covering him versus all that all that field. And I think, it's just one of those things where Ryan's really, really good at feeling out a defense and seeing what they're giving him. And we took advantage of that. So, what were some of your other takeaways, other than the elements and whatever, who impressed you? Who do you think, we might need to see a little less of? Just give me some names of who impressed you. I know the top two are going to be on offense and defense, but there are guys, but who else?
Yeah, I think what I'll start with we'll go with the good, the bad, the ugly. I think the good for me was the offensive line was really, really good. That was a group that we talked a lot about during the fall camp. This move of DeJuan Jones to right tackle is looking inspired. It's such a talented group up front, and when you have guys like that can handle their business and control the line of scrimmage, it makes everything else go. So that certainly fell into the category of good. Trey Henderson and Chop Williams were really special last night. And, I think, Chop doesn't get a lot of run just because he wasn't the number one running back in the country coming out of high school. And he was a 3-star kid, and expectations are lower, but I'm telling you, I think he's an NFL running back. I think he's absolutely an NFL running back. I think he'll draw an NFL paycheck. And to have guys like that, back there, and I don't know what more you can say about Henderson. 3 touches, 70-yard touchdown, 28 yards per touch. He's we've been hyping him all fall, but I think people understand what we were talking about now. You can just see it. The burst from him is really something that's pretty special. In the good, I'd throw Cody Simon in there. Good. He didn't start the game. I wasn't sure if he was going to play because he's been nicked up and a little nagging injury, but I think they knew they had to put him out there. And I thought Cody Simon was really good. And I thought he flashed. And so I thought those were things that I put under the good. What about you? What were your? I'll just throw it back to you. We'll do good, bad, ugly. Those were my goods. What are your goods?
All right. Obviously the offensive line was fantastic. I thought Paris was getting a lot of movement in the running game. Him and DeJuan are a major problem on the right side when it comes to running the ball and clearing guys out. It's fun watching DeJuan play because you can see he has so much joy when he plays because he's a kid that sat on the bench. And when there was rumbling last December about Florida potentially coming after him, and there was that smoke, and then we find out Thayer's coming back, which it wasn't expected. And DeJuan could have jumped in the portal and been guaranteed a starting tackle spot pretty much anywhere in the country, and instead he stuck it out. And Thayer talked to him, and Thayer made the move to guard. And now we get to watch this massive freak of nature play right tackle and play it at a very high level. And it's just really fun. It's a selfless group. Nick Petit went from right to left, and Thayer's inside at guard, and I thought they played fantastic. Luke Wimpler, he stepped in for Harry Miller and played great for his first snap. That's the thing is, Stud takes a lot of heat, but he had 5 guys literally starting at brand new positions last night. First time ever. The weird thing is that was Paris Johnson's first start. It's DeJuan's first start. It was Thayer's first start at left guard. It was Nick's first start at left tackle. It was Luke Wimpler's first start. So it's like, in the past when you said, okay, you're going to have 5 guys starting at new spots and you're going to have 3 guys starting their first games ever, you would think that's going to look like vomit. And instead it was outstanding. And you have a lot of media outlets saying it's the best offensive line in the country. And I've talked to those guys a ton, and the Joe Moore Award that's a real thing. There's never been an Ohio State O-line that's won it. Bama won it last year. LSU won it 2 years ago. We've never won it. So that's a real goal for this unit. And I think that they're well on their way if they can just keep progressing to where they are. I thought Garrett Wilson was the best player in training camp other than Nick Petit-Frere, and he was outstanding. Chris Olave, what more needs to be said, is probably the best duo of wide receivers we've ever had on a team. Trey Henderson, obviously we've waxed poetic about him. Saquon Barkley 2.0, essentially, his returning kicks, just, absolute dynamite when he gets the ball. He needs the ball a lot more. And, Chop Williams dropping weight. And again, I think that there is a thing when a guy isn't a heralded recruit, like people, still think like, Sammy Maldonado is like some freak is like, he's such a high heralded recruit. And he never did anything at Ohio State. And, I think that they get a much higher benefit of coming in as a 5-star and producing and performing, as opposed to like a 3-star who just shows up and balls out, and that's why I don't think people are excited enough about Chop Williams, because I still remember he caught that swing pass in the spring game, and I had to look down at my program. I was like, who's 28? I mean, he is fast. I saw his Mayan Williams. I was like, there's no way. And it was. I mean, he dedicated himself, his body changed, and really did a good job. Defensively, I thought Haskell was very active, did a great job. Cody Simon, again, is my favorite player on the defense. He's like AJ Hawk 2.0, super active, great blitzer, sideline to sideline. He's a 4.51 speed guy, which is huge. And our back end, wasn't great, but we rolled a lot of guys, and I think we found a couple of guys that could play. And for as banged up as they were able to hang in there. I mean, again, it wasn't a great night by the defense, but it was a lot of guys first times ever playing, and the elements were a factor, and the home team was playing great. I mean, like everything was kind of going their way, and it was interesting. So who's your bad? This is gonna be interesting to separate what is bad and what is ugly. So give me your definition of bad from last night.
I think bad, for me, Tommy Eichenberg was bad, and I love Tommy, and I'm a big fan, and I thought he's been terrific all fall, and I just didn't think it was a good game for him, and I was surprised because I thought it was a Tommy Eichenberg type of game coming into it, a running game, and I'm totally rooting for him to be better. I think he can be better, but he needs to be better. I didn't think that was a good effort by him last night. I thought Bryson Shaw looked a little lost and took some tough angles out there, and didn't particularly distinguish himself. Again, love Bryson. Think he's a young guy, got a bright future ahead of him, but I think he needs to be better. I don't want to put CJ Stroud in the bad category, but I'd say it was a tale of two halves. I thought he looked a little, a little unsure of himself the first half, and he looked better as the game progressed. His stats were gaudy, and anybody looking at that box score would say he was otherworldly. I think we've come to expect such a high level of our quarterback play that I think that certainly needs to improve as well. So I think we had some guys that the good news is we won, and there's never a bad thing about winning a game, and there's certainly never a bad thing about winning a road game in the Big Ten. So I will never ever underestimate the accomplishment of doing that. But I think we've got to, they say that teams improve the most from their game 1 to game 2. Well, we need to see some improvement, across the board, and I think the coaches have their work cut out for them.
Yeah, I think in terms of bad, I thought that the running back rotation is probably in the charge for me, just because I think Master Teague's a great kid, but him getting 12 snaps and Trey Henderson getting 7, and and Crowley getting more carries and T getting more carries, I think that's going to get rectified after watching the tape. Trey was excellent. And some of the I think CJ, like, it's hard to call him bad when I think he was anxious, and he said it was funny because he's so young and he's so honest. And in the post-game press conference, he said, yeah, when I started the game, I wasn't locked in at all. And you're just like, oh my God, why would you say that? And like, one of the beat writers said that to Ryan Davis. Said, hey, CJ came up, and the first thing he says, like, yeah, I wasn't locked in at all at the start of the game. And I'm like, oh my God. It's like, and Ryan just laughs because he's like, this is like that youthful honesty that most people are going to walk up and say, yeah, I wasn't ready to play. So I didn't throw it real well and didn't do real well. But, I think he's, they gotta lock in. They gotta be a little more focused. I think that, as stupid as it is, like, managing a road night game sucks because you're in the hotel all day and stuff. And, we'll see how the noon game affects these guys. Cause the noon game, these guys get up and they're ready to roll. And, most of training camp, they're practicing at noon. So their bodies are used to playing at noon, and they don't practice at night during training camp. So it's going to be interesting to see how this game is affected. And, but yeah, I thought that, he got better. I think sometimes that these guys are guilty of trying to do too much, trying to be Justin Fields, trying to do whatever. But when you got receivers like we do and running backs like we do, I mean, all you got to do is just, it's like if you're playing 3-on-3 basketball and you've got like LeBron James and, Russell Westbrook as your two teammates, all you got to do is pass them the ball, let them go win the game for you. Like, you don't have to do too much. But Give me your ugly. What was your ugly on the night? I think I know where we're gonna go with this, but give me your ugly for that.
The ugly was the defensive coordination, the defensive rotations and mass substitutions. And if I, again, it gets worse as you watch the game multiple times. It doesn't get better, I'm telling you. But watching guys run on and off the field and pointing and just the mask and just the feeling that you've got of just mass utter confusion on the defensive side of the ball. And I put that in stark contrast to the offensive side of the ball, where I'm not sure how many penalties. I'm not sure. I don't think we had a holding penalty. I can't remember if we had a procedure penalty. I think we had a procedure penalty, but it was on a wide receiver.
It was on Olave.
Yeah, it was on Olave. I mean, we didn't have any fumbles. We had the one turnover by Stroud, but I mean, there couldn't have been a more stark contrast between the two units. Even our special teams were pretty special. I got to give Parker Fleming credit for. I mean, we converted with that field goal.
Mm-hmm.
Believe it or not, I thought that field goal was important when we kicked it, and got all of our extra points down. Didn't do anything silly on the rest of the side of the game. So I was really happy with a lot of that. But the feeling that I got from watching the defense, it wasn't the tackling and it wasn't the yards, the lack of sacks, or it wasn't any of those things. Those things I can all excuse, explain, understand. It was the, what are we doing? Where am I supposed to be, coach type of stuff. And it's the stuff that you don't expect to see from your 8-year-old flag football team. You saw with the Buckeyes. And I really thought that we were past that. I really thought that last year, there was explanations for it, legitimate explanations as to why we look so unorganized on the defensive side of the ball. But we're back there again this year, and that's got to get fixed, because we're not going to win the national championship. We're not going to be a factor in the playoffs. I don't know if we're going to get out of the Big Ten unscathed if we're in that situation. So it's like they've got to fix that. And it's got to happen quick.
Yeah, an old adage in coaching is, if something gives you problems the week before, you're probably going to see it this next week. So it's going to be interesting to see if Oregon brings any different looks, exotic formations. I mean, it doesn't sound exotic to play 7 offensive linemen and line one up as a tight end and one up as a wing, and line up 2 tight ends of 7 O linemen. But our guys, early in the game when they ran the 2 tight end look with 2 linemen, that unbalanced look, our guys lined up pretty good to it. They just basically covered every guy. They went basically 7 across. They had 5 D linemen, 2 linebackers on the edges, and then they matched the quarterback and the running back with a safety and a linebacker. They lined up to that pretty decently. But as the night went on and they were showing different looks where they were putting the one guy in a wing, they're trading, I mean, they had all kinds of funky, unbalanced stuff where they're putting 7 O linemen in the wing. Because I think that PJ, the thing that he recognizes, like, look, these guys have 0 returning starts at linebacker. So how can we get as many of those guys on the field? Well, let's run 7 offensive linemen out there. Like, you can't play nickel against that. You can't play, with 5 DBs or 5 DBs. Like, you need to have 3 linebackers in, because otherwise you're going to get mauled by these giant linemen. Let's make them get 5 D linemen on the game. Let's make them run these kind of unorthodox, 5-2 defensive fronts and match our personnel. And that's what was a big thing that he said in pregame, is like, we want them to have to coach every single snap. So, they didn't give us any particularly orthodox looks. And I think it's something that's gonna be interesting to see, like, if the adjustments and the coaching from the sideline can improve. Because, like, if you have, like, Anthony Schlegel and AJ Hawk and guys like that are, veterans and, incredibly sharp from a football talent perspective, they can communicate that with, Jim Haycock or whoever the defensive coordinator is, and say, hey, this is the look we're getting. This is what they're doing. This is what they do when they shift. And you can get it all kind of drawn up, on the grease board on the sideline and get it fixed. But, when you have a bunch of young guys out there that are just nervous about trying to make a play, or just nervous about holding their gap, I mean, I don't know if they can communicate as effectively as those guys. So that's a lot of coordination between the upstairs coaches, Kerry Combs downstairs on the sideline, and just saying, hey guys, what can you see? Because some of that, some of it's on Kerry, but for sometimes with Kerry, it's hard to see that stuff when you're down on the field. The guys that really see it are the guys up in the booth. I mean, you got to say, this is how they're lining up, and then when they're substituting on and off the field, you got to say, hey, okay, it's 7 O linemen, 7 O linemen. Okay, it's Yeah, so we got to match that with like, our 5-2, our whatever they call it, diamond or bear or whatever like there's a lot of chess going on. Okay, they got 6 linemen on. Okay, and you got to make sure that coordination's tight because you don't have a lot of time to substitute, and you got to make sure that everybody's locked in, paying attention, because you don't know when you're going to need a third D tackle to come in the game, or you're going to need 3 D tackles, 2 DNs, 3 linebackers, and then okay, well, what guy's in the game now? Okay, we need a Will. Who's our Will? Who's our Mike? Who's our Sam? Like that's part of when you're playing these funky formations. Like you see this, like the Patriots did this against the Ravens in the playoffs a few years ago, where they lined up Shane Vereen as an ineligible receiver, and the Ravens couldn't line up right because they thought you put Shane Vereen, who's their pass catching star back, out there, they automatically think to cover him, but he was lined up in an ineligible position. So they actually, the NFL put in a rule for that because it was something that teams are really slick. They do stuff like that, like the Patriots did that, and they didn't show it until after the first half, so they couldn't adjust at halftime. So it was like they started to spring that on in the second half, and it won them the game. The Ravens couldn't line up correctly, and the Ravens, that's an NFL team with NFL players and Ray Lewis at linebacker, and it didn't matter. So it's just one of those the gamesmanship of football, and sometimes it does pay to scheme it up. And like I said, them holding the ball kept our offense off the field. So if there is a blueprint to beat Ohio State, it's to keep the ball away from that offense, keep the ball away from Olave and Garrett Wilson and Trey Henderson, and just keep it for as long as possible. So yeah, but it was good. So let's talk a little Oregon. They haven't played yet, so these guys get a couple extra days, but what are you looking for improvement wise from the Oregon or for our offense and defense heading into this Oregon week, which is going to be a little bit longer of a week, which is great for us, and it's not as beneficial for Oregon?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing's really going to be that Ohio State's going to have a much better idea about the rotations, and I think the stuff like Teague and Crowley, taking carries away from Henderson and Mayans probably not going to happen again against Oregon. At least I wouldn't expect that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I would think defensively, if you can get Brown and Banks back, hopefully Proctor's back as well. You've got something a little bit more settled. I would expect Oregon's going to try a lot of that same. That these won't be the last exotic fronts that we'll see on from an offense, and Oregon will do some creative things as well. And they've got a quarterback that's a little bit more mobile. He may be not quite as accurate as the Minnesota quarterback, but he's who wasn't terribly accurate. But I think he's a little bit more mobile, a little bit more of an athlete. So we're gonna have to work on contained, because I felt a lot of times when we were slowing out to stop the run, if that quarterback would have just pulled it out and kept it, he could have gone for a long way. So we've got some things to address defensively. I'm glad that we've got a couple of extra days to do it. I'm really glad we've got a couple extra days. I think that'll pay huge dividends. Hopefully the home crowd and being back the energy of the Horseshoe will really help out as well. And like I said, I just what I'm looking for is more organization, a little bit more structure, and a little bit more of a controlled feeling on the defensive side of the ball. I think the offense is going to be fine, and I think every malady that we had on that side, which were very small, can be fixed. The defensive stuff, they need to spend some time on that, and I trust they will here over the next 9-10 days.
Yeah, I think it's just constant walkthroughs, constant communication, guys settling in and being a little bit more I don't want to say relaxed, but like a little bit more sure of themselves when they're figuring out how to line up versus strange formations. And and I think having Cody Simon out there, if he can get a little healthier, start the game, play the entire game, that'll help, because he seems like he's the leader of that defense from the linebacker spot. Usually your leader's got to be a linebacker, and he seems like he fits the bill. He's an impact guy. So, hopefully he'll be out there for the whole game. And if we get Seven Banks going again, it was interesting he got help for that game, because it wasn't like we were blowing those guys out. It wasn't like we were playing Ken or Akron. We're playing a team that could have easily beaten us if they had held the ball for about another 7 minutes. But it's going to be fascinating to see what Oregon tries to do. Again, like Minnesota, we knew what they were going to do with their big O line and just try to shorten the game. But I think that's the game plan to beat Ohio State, is you just can't let their offensive skill guys be on the field, and it's trestle ball. It's let's put the defense in great situations and hold the ball for as long as we can. And it's a lot harder for an offense to score when they're sitting on the bench. And that was like kind of Tress's unspoken philosophy is let's run the ball, grind the clock, make our defense only have to play, 40 plays instead of 80 plays. That was always kind of like the thing with Chip Kelly. Like when Mike Vrabel turned down being the defensive coordinator for Chip Kelly in San Francisco, part of it was because he didn't want to have to have his defense on the field for 90 plays a game, and then you're giving up all these points and people think you're a terrible coordinator. It's like, no, I just got to play like 2 whole games of defense essentially, instead of, a coach that, controls the clock and runs it and, helps the defense out. You're not doing crazy stuff. But this was a great podcast. We'll get with Banks, see if we can knock something out Sunday night. But appreciate everybody. I mean, I hope you guys enjoyed our coverage. Real quick, Ken, just give me a quick, I know what you're going to say about this, a quick little synopsis of the 3-day debut of our trio on the beat with Tom, Tony, and Kevin, because I thought they were absolutely out of this world good. They created all kinds of new content. You guys need to check it out on our YouTube channel at Buckeye Scoop. But give me a little bit on those 3, because I thought they just blew it out of the park this weekend.
Yeah, the pregame show, the postgame show, the coverage, the live updates, the instant impact. I mean, like I said, and all the way down to Scoop Eats and producing a eating thing. I like I said, I was really excited about the coverage and what they're doing, and as you said, we're just scratching the surface in terms of what we're going to be doing here at Buckeye Scoop. And this was just a little bit of a preview, but it was the opening weekend of reviews were rave reviews, and those guys did a great job.
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. I love Scoop Eats. It's going to the Juicy Lucy place. It was like going to a local place is always kind of cool to see our guys kick it there. And Tom Moore took that big bite of the cheeseburger and the cheese like exploded all over the place. And I was like, man, that's great content. So appreciate those guys. It's never been a better time to be a part of the Scoop family, because I'm telling you, man, we're cranking it up and we're putting out some great content. All of our guys are firing on all cylinders, and it's been real fun. Well, we appreciate you guys. If you like this video, please give us a like. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Give us a few comments, and we will see you on the Ask the Insiders message board. Thank you, Scoop family. We appreciate you guys.